I don't know when it started, but the narrative in the US that Bad Bunny is the biggest artist in the world has gained so much steam, and people believe it when it's completely wrong. People in the US mainly aren't dumb for believing this. After all, Bad Bunny has been Spotify's most streamed artist in the world for the past 3 years straight, and the first to ever accomplish that feat, being the number 2 most streamed artist in the world on YouTube in 2022 with 14.7 billion streams, and the second highest grossing tour date in US history. But that doesn't tell the full story. One of the tweets I sent out that got some pushback was when I said, "Y'all want me to believe that Bad Bunny is the biggest artist in the world so bad when his album is not even top 100 in the UK." This wasn't meant to hate on Bad Bunny, as I've shown support in videos dating back to 2018, but even Adam22 tried to make it seem like my point didn't make sense, saying, "Y'all want me to believe Joe Rogan is the biggest podcaster in the world when his podcast is not even top 100 in Nigeria." Well, yeah, kind of. Keep in mind, I sent this tweet out in December, while Bad Bunny was having a historic album run going in the top 5 albums sales week after week with Un Verano Sin Ti. Any artist in America that is having massive success like Bad Bunny was having would also be charting in the UK. Other than Canada, it is the next closest and biggest market to adopt music. So if it wasn't translating there at all, then how can you be global? Circling back to metrics, which is what a lot of Americans are using to try and paint Bad Bunny as the biggest artist in the world, which is another case of American bias, assuming if something is big here and it's foreign in language, I know Puerto Rico is part of the US, then it must be the biggest thing in the world, right? No. What these numbers largely neglect are markets. For instance, Spotify is a massive platform, and it is a big deal to be the most streamed artist on Spotify 3 years in a row. But there are many markets globally where Spotify is rarely, if ever, used, including but not limited to the majority of Africa, the Indian subcontinent, and most of Asia, which leaves North America, South America, and the majority of Europe, which makes a lot more sense why he would be the most streamed artist there. However, if we still judge strictly by Spotify, another key metric other than overall streams would be peak monthly listeners. The monthly listener metric is important because it calculates how many unique people have streamed your music in the past 28 days, which is a measure of breadth as opposed to depth. To quickly illustrate the concept of breadth and depth, we can use a familiar example in the hip-hop world of NBA Youngboy. He was the second most streamed artist in the US, following behind Drake, with over 5 billion streams. Is Youngboy the second biggest artist in the US? Absolutely not even close. But this number is due to 2 major factors, which are the amount of music drop and how often your fans stream your music, which would be depth. Bad Bunny does not even rank in the top 10 of peak monthly listeners, maxing out at 65 million, which is incredibly impressive, don't get me wrong, but it shows he has more depth in audience than the top 1 and 2 being The Weeknd and Taylor Swift, who most definitely have more breadth at a peak of 111 million and 84 million respectively. I should also make it clear and point out that The Weeknd and Taylor Swift are not lacking in depth of audience either, but that's a matter we'll get to shortly. And also that we're just assuming all of the streams and numbers are real for the sake of this video. It won't change the point I'm making either way. First, let's go over the reasons that Bad Bunny is even big inside of the US, because he's outselling many US stars who make music in English in their own home country. Other than the music, which is great, he wouldn't have gotten to this level without it. Another important factor that is often neglected is demographics. There is a significant Spanish-speaking audience in the US, at least 13% or more, which, while being a minority, the majority of Americans in major cities have experience and constant exposure to Spanish speakers and the culture from varying different Latino immigrants, being Colombians, Cubans, Mexicans, and many others. So it isn't something that's completely foreign to them, which makes it easier for Americans to adopt than, say, a Hindi artist or an Arab artist. This is easily illustrated by Bad Bunny's tour dates. In America, he didn't do shows in places where many other popular acts that make music in English would perform, such as Tulsa, Oklahoma, St. Louis, Missouri, Salt Lake City, Utah, Louisville, Kentucky, Cleveland, Ohio, and many more I can name. Now, before someone spouts off ignorantly in the comments saying, well, there are barely any Spanish speakers in those cities and states, why would he go there? That's my point exactly, demographics. And to illustrate this even better, look no further than his Latin America tour dates. Whether it was X100 Pre or Por Siempre Tour, El Último Tour del Mundo, or the most recent World's Hottest Tour, he seems to touch down in pretty much every country in Latin and South America except one, Brazil. This is where language no longer becomes an excuse for those trying to defend it, because in Brazil, they speak Portuguese. It is a massive market with a population of over 200 million people, and they're far closer to Spanish-speaking countries, geographically speaking, and culturally than they are to America. So how is it that Bad Bunny hasn't done shows there yet? People like Justin Bieber, Harry Styles, and many others have done arenas or bigger, which brings us back to my main point, which is that if you're going to be the biggest artist, you've got to touch the world. And that's difficult to measure if we're talking influence. For instance, hip hop and rock and roll touch the entire world. You have people in villages in Africa listening to Pop Smoke and people in the cities of Japan trying to get dreads. Similarly with rock and roll. But the easiest way to measure this that cannot be faked is by tour dates. People purchasing tickets to show up to your show worldwide, and Bad Bunny has not even come close to doing that, but several other artists who are bigger than him globally have. An even better example of a group that I would also say is bigger than Bad Bunny globally is BTS. They had done 2 nights back-to-back of stadium shows in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and a packed-out arena of over 30,000 people in Saudi Arabia, where Korean is not even a language people think of in these 2 respective countries. That is an actual global movement. This is where I'm repeatedly surprised when Americans act like I made a controversial statement when I said that he wasn't the biggest artist in the world. Because if you spent any time in nearly any African country the past couple of years, you would likely never hear a Bad Bunny song. You would most definitely hear Ed Sheeran's The Shape of You playing at some point, though, in any crevice of the world. That's just an extreme example, but Bad Bunny has never toured in Europe. We know he's popular in Spain, and yes, he has performed in Sweden, the Netherlands, Italy, France, Germany, but these were all as part of a festival lineup. I know we have people from these countries that watch my channel. Let them tell you in the comments, is Bad Bunny anywhere close to popular in your country? Now, it wouldn't be fair for us to judge Bad Bunny's lack of touring in Europe and the UK to what other artists who make music in English are able to do, because that's like home court advantage for them. So let's meet in Asia. Bad Bunny has never even stepped foot for any type of performance in Asia, be it his own tour, a club performance, or as part of a festival. Yet, Harry Styles, The Weeknd, Justin Bieber, Ed Sheeran, and a couple of others who I would consider to be bigger artists than Bad Bunny have done arenas and some even stadiums in 1 or more Asian countries. The reason why this is important is because to be the biggest artist in the world, you have to transcend barriers, and that includes language barriers. If you're only able to do concerts and captivate an audience in countries where they speak Spanish or are familiar enough with Spanish, then you're the biggest artist in the Spanish-speaking world, which I think that is an arguable title to give Bad Bunny. I do think it might still be incorrect, but I would have to do some research on the biggest shows in these countries and see if any other acts have him beat there, but I'm giving it to him. I have to point out, this is not to knock Bad Bunny at all, and I think this is completely out of his control. He said in an interview, I believe, that he couldn't see or wanted to try and trailblaze Spanish music into potentially being the biggest in the world, although that wasn't his intention initially, but that is so far away and near impossible. The global dominance of English music is in part due to the global dominance of the United States and in part the United Kingdom, both economically as well as their media. The most popular movies, the strongest distribution, the biggest music stars, the biggest actors. The whole world has been conditioned for at least 70 plus years that the best entertainers have been in the English language. So even in places where English is spoken far less, like Asia, they're still more open to it than Spanish. English is also a second language that most people across the world learn, from Africa, Latin America, Europe, and even Asia. So the majority of people can at least grasp some of what is being said. It makes perfect sense why Bad Bunny is not the biggest artist in the world. Spanish has never dominated media or entertainment on a global scale. Neither has Korean though, which makes it that much more confusing in an impressive way that K-pop acts like BTS have been able to dominate and sell out shows in countries where someone has likely never even encountered a Korean person in their life.